Hi, my name is Julia Buckley, and I'm working with Patrick McGrath, Nora Tucker, and Grace Connors on our presentation covering the Turing test. In this presentation, we will begin by having an introduction that's defining the Turing test and its history. We'll be discussing the passing of the Turing tests, its connections to the NLP, and our conclusion about the relevance of the Turing test today.
So the history of the test. The test comes from Alan Turing, who proposed it in his seminal paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence. It was also initially referred to as the imitation game, if anyone has ever heard of that before. And the test attempts to answer the question of whether can a machine think by reframing the question in a better way, as if an interrogator is communicating with either a person or a computer, can they tell the difference between them? So essentially, it's trying to define a sufficient condition for attributing intelligence to a computer. And Turing was inspired by René Descartes, who in his paper Discourse wrote that humans could distinguish machines from humans by two factors. The first is that a program could never put together words or signs as humans do to express their thoughts to others. So simply through conversation, you should be able to figure out whether a computer is a human or not. And also that a machine would inevitably fail to complete some task because they were not programmed to handle it, because it is simply impossible to give a machine enough organs to make it act as a human in all capacities.
So what actually is the Turing test? The Turing test consists of one human, one machine, and one interrogator. The human is acting normally, and the computer is trying to get the interrogator to guess incorrectly by acting like a human as much as possible. The interrogator is conversing by text with both of these players, and their task is to determine which is a human and which is a computer. To give an example of this Turing test conversation, we will be showing one player and another player. One is a machine and one is a human, and we will just be reading through this example here. I'll be the interrogator. How tall are you?
Almost 6 feet tall.
How heavy are you?
Just over 10 stone.
What is your gender?
Male.
Now player 2. How tall are you?
My height is about 160 centimeters. It's 5 feet 4 inches.
How heavy are you?
My grandfather taught me not to disclose non-solicited information about myself. Like on the other question, do you have a watch? Never tell time, but answer yes or no. And I forgot to ask you, where are you from?
What is your gender?
I'm a young boy, if you care to know, and not very ugly, by the way. The conversation above was actually between a judge and a famous chatbot, Eugene Goosman. In Turing's 1950 paper, Computing Machinery Intelligence, he predicted by 2000, a chatbot could pass as a human with 30% acceptance. In 2014, a contest was held on the 60th anniversary of Alan Turing's death, and a chatbot finally passed the Turing test. The chatbot, Eugene Goosman, convinced 33% of voters that it was human. Eugene Goosman played a 13-year-old boy from Ukraine. This tactic allowed it to be given more forgiveness for slow or indirect answers to questions. There's controversy surrounding Goosman due to the usage of deception tactics instead of true intelligence. These deception tactics led to the weakness of the Turing test. The Turing test can only prove that a machine can intimidate intelligence. Eugene was not an AI that is as smart as humans. It used the judge's desire to believe that it was a human, along with the quirks of being a 13-year-old boy, to pass the test. Humans are inherently stupid and make mistakes, so these chatbots can capitalize off of human errors to sound more human.
So understanding natural language processing and generating intelligent responses is a key part of NLP. The Turing test gives us one criterion by which we can evaluate a computer's ability to do this. Right now, language models don't really understand human language. They just do a great job at manipulating it. They rely on their training data being an accurate representation of what they're inevitably doing. And this can be seen through things like Amazon's Alexa or Apple's Siri. They're clearly not human and their scope is limited, but they're very successful at working within their specific scope to answer questions. In order to pass the Turing test, a language model must be broader. This poses unique challenges for natural language processing. Instead of training large models on a very specific set of information, they must be able to handle inputs on data they haven't seen before. Having the Turing test gave researchers in NLP a big goal to shoot for. Now that it's been accomplished, it can still be expanded on, but the test can also be modified to represent other goals. For example, can a computer learn a new language like a human can? Or can it do mathematical conversions as easily as a human can, even if presented with things it hasn't seen before? Right now, the answer is no, or at least not as well as a human. Mimicking human intelligence, as initially suggested in the Turing machine, continues to be a benchmark for NLP systems.
So now we arrive at our final question of this presentation. Why is the Turing test relevant? Initially, the first point is that artificial intelligence is a growing field, and Turing initially proposed the test to spark debate about its nature. And clearly, since we are still talking about it decades later, it is still causing discussion about what intelligence means for machines, and we have not arrived at one single answer. And also, with the creation of Eugene Goostman, it has been proven that a computer can simulate the behavior of a human, which presents a challenge to cybercrime. And the test can help us answer the question of how can we prevent a human from being fooled by a computer?
Here are resources for this presentation, and thank you so much for watching.